Hello people, today is sourdough starter. You need this to make the sourdough bread. I looked at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of recipes. I've started off by using one recipe and one method, but then I ended up using another. So what I discovered in the 9-day journey of a sourdough starter is that it's very much your own thing. The biggest problem with sourdough starter is fear. Do not be afraid of it. It's only flour and water, so it's not going to do anything. Although when mine developed, I was a bit scared when I went to sleep at night. So the starter is you need a jug, you need some flour, and you need some water. So the first thing you do is put 100 grams of flour of your choice. It can be bread flour, it can be multigrain flour, it can be whole wheat flour. So it's 100 grams of flour and 100 millilitres of water. You leave that for 24 hours and then the next day you add to it 50 grams of flour and 50 millilitres of water, and you do that every day. Just waiting for the gift eddies to marinate in the fridge, and I thought I'd come back to the old bread flour. Okay, I've got a bag of bread flour, which is multi-cereal, so wholemeal, and in this jug I've got 200 millilitres of water and 200 grams of flour. This is going to be the sourdough starter. You can have a look at it. That's after 24 hours. It doesn't look as if anything's happened, but apparently you wait about 7 days and it does happen. So stage 2 of this process is I take half of that flour off and then I give it some more flour. So I'll just have a look at that, see what happens, and I'll come back to you. So that was my first recipe. Well, because I had to take half of that off and discard it, I then looked for other recipes because I didn't want to discard anything. And I eventually came up with this recipe which will work. So it's 100 grams of flour, 100 millilitres of water for your first starter. There seems to be sort of little bubbly bits starting. There's the half I took off yesterday because I thought I'd have the 2 on the go. And now I've got to add more flour and more water. And we'll see what happens. Alright, so I've taken half off and I've separated it. I've done 2 lots because I'm just interested to see what happens with it. So I've added 100 millilitres of water and 100 milligrams of flour. It's lukewarm water, okay, so more later. Again, it's only 50 grams of flour and 50 millilitres of water. In the continuing saga of the sourdough starter, what you can see all the little bubbles starting to form in there, which apparently is a good thing. So what you're supposed to do is take half of it off and then you feed it with another 50 grams of flour and 50 millilitres of water. But because I hate throwing things away, I've kept it. So here's its ugly twin, in that you can actually see through the jar on this one all the bubbles that are forming. But so you take half off and you feed it every day with more flour and more water. So I've done that now for a couple of days, but what I need to show you as well are because it's actually quadruplets. So I've not got any more measuring jugs left. I've got loads of glass jars. So I'm not sure what to do, whether I should carry on dividing it and discard it maybe. Oh, it's horrible even to say the word discard. Or maybe carry on making it because somebody might want it. You never know, but apparently once you've got the starter going, it lasts for life. There's someone that's had it for donkey's years. So we'll see where that goes by the end of the week. My daughter Alison asked me how long a donkey's year was. Well, I had no idea, so if anybody knows how long a donkey's year is, please let me know. But what I did find on one of the recipes, some guys actually had it for 9 years from the original starter, so literally it does last a long time. Here are my sourdough quadruplets. I'm going to feed it now, so by feeding it you just put 50 grams of flour in and 50 millilitres of water. This is the one in the jar, so you can see all of the bubbles. You can't quite see them. Oh, sorry, hang on, I'll move back. You can see the bubbles in it, so that's working quite well. I'm quite pleased with it. Just that I've found a different recipe now, so I don't have to discard anything, so I'm happy with that. I've just mixed the flour and the water in, and you can see already that the bubbles are starting to rise in it. It's quite interesting, but I'm not even sure yet how it works in the bread. So that'll be a little challenge when we come to it as well. By this stage, I was getting quite used to the sourdough starter and my little quadruplets, so the fear had gone. My evil quads have changed slightly today, in that it looks as if there's sort of water separation, but apparently that can happen. Since I've run out of this whole grain flour, I'm actually going to feed it today with plain flour and cross our fingers, one and all. I hope I haven't killed my children. Today I fed it with 50 grams of flour and 50 millilitres of tepid water. And it looks like this now that I've mixed it through, which apparently is how it's supposed to look. So there it is, all nice and happy again after the mixing. And already the little bubbles have risen to the surface to show that the yeasts are actually working. It's not yeast, it's natural yeast. Apparently it takes it from the air, and today is the last day for the feeding, so tomorrow is going to be sourdough bread. So we're now on day 9 of the sourdough starter, and as you can see, it's really working well now. So really, for my sourdough, 7 days isn't long enough. 9 days is the optimum, and I've made the sourdough bread. So one of the quads is in the fridge now, having had its 50 grams of flour and 50 millilitres of tepid water. And that can live in the fridge now, and I've got to feed that weekly apparently. So what I've done as well today, I've actually made another single loaf. And so this is one that I've recently used half of and fed. So that one's going to go in the fridge now. I've actually got a good home for that one, so it's going to go for adoption tomorrow. All right, so the crux of the whole of the sourdough starter mixing is that it depends very much on the temperature of your kitchen. Mine is relatively cold. It should take between 7 and 9 days. Mine has actually taken 9 days, but I used it to make 2 loaves on day 8, and I've used it to make 1 loaf today, just to see the difference. Don't be afraid of it, and please give it a try and make it your own sourdough and have quads just like me.